everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis and Nate once again. Middle of April. It's a glorious middle of April. Finally, I had a 4-day weekend.
Right on.
Because I took 2 days off because I got my Moderna #2 shot, which absolutely put me on my ass for a day. I don't know what juice they put in that second one, but it's some good and or bad. I mean, that's the first one is like how they start to like lay down the setting for the microchip, and then the second one is the microchip integrating into your system. But it's cool because I can open up my Windows machine just by being near it. I don't have to put in a password anymore. So
thanks,
6 of one, half dozen of the other, yo.
Yeah, man, I haven't even been scheduled for shot one because I live in a local authority that's basically like the most unequal in Britain. It's been featured in the news that Southwark Borough, where I live, has the biggest gap between its poorer areas and its richer areas. And I live in one of the poorer wards. I actually live in the ward that is the worst. So I don't even think they've finished vaccinating people over 60 yet. Whereas they're in many places, for example, I believe in the southern part of the borough in Dulwich Village, they are vaccinating people who are much younger than that. I know lots of folks who live in North London, not like the northern, but like north of the river at least, who are like under 30 even, who have gotten the first shot. I have no idea when I'm going to get my shot. Honestly, I don't fucking care because I'm being cautious about it, and like I don't have a job that requires me to be exposed to stuff. My co-hosts have all been vaccinated. I have not. I don't know what the deal is. Cynthia's gotten her first shot. With the potential vaccine shortage, I have no idea when she's going to get her second shot, but she's at least had her first one. And so we're just waiting on whenever. I mean, but yeah, it's warmer. Trees are blooming. I rode past some cum trees today. It's just, it's a spring day. You know what? Life goes on.
Which one of the cum trees for you? Are they the Bradford pears?
Yeah, Bradford pears. Yeah, I think. I'm pretty sure.
What's the other name that the Brits have for them? Starts with an L or something.
I don't know.
Linden trees.
Linden trees. I don't think linden trees are cum trees. So I think are dogwood trees cum trees? I know Bradford pears are because we maybe they are lindens. I don't know, but I mean, like, I just remember in high school, like near our student parking lot, because I went to a high school that was huge, and so they basically students had to park at the stadium, and then you'd walk up to the school. And so around that area where like the football stadium was, they had a bunch of trees they had planted when they had built that whole facility, and they had planted Bradford pears, of course, because what else would you plant, And yes, they smell like cum every April, May-ish. I don't know, like Midwest, it get a little colder, so I think it might have been around May, but school was still definitely in session. You're just going to your car after school, and you're like, I smell cum. What's happening?
Who's out here busting?
Who is fucking blasting rope all over the high school parking lot? What the fuck?
I realize that we're all a bunch of horny 16-year-olds, but come on now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's weird because it's just sort of like there's this knowing glance you have with other people where you're both like, do you smell that? And you're like, yeah, it's cum. It smells like cum. So it's just I only noticed it a little because I was cycling and I've made this joke with friends, and I'll make it on the show, that because between lockdown has lifted, you can eat and drink outdoors now, like in restaurants outdoors. Meeting rules have been relaxed a little bit. I'm sure my idiot neighbors are going to have more house parties than the house parties they've already been having during lockdown when they aren't supposed to be. But there's also just like, it's warmer and more people are doing stuff, and a lot of folks who have left the city, some of them have come back. And so for me, cycle commuting and stuff during lockdown, just coming to the studio and back, you get used to a certain pattern of things. And like, vehicle traffic is what it is, but like it was either lots of vehicle traffic or very little vehicle traffic, but that was basically it. There were very few pedestrians by and large. There were very few other cyclists. As soon as it got warm and the restrictions started to lift, it was like the AI for London started glitching, because it's just shit getting thrown at you everywhere. Because there's way more people on the roads, there's way more cyclists. I think it's half term right now. It's like the equivalent of spring break. So kids are out of school this week. There's lots of folks cycling, doing like cargo cycles, which I mean, I imagine is like a commercial thing, like for work and stuff. But like a cycle with a big thing on the front for cargo, and then like a trailer hitch and a trailer attached to the back with also more cargo. So like little
bike lorry,
little bike lorries, little bike trains on the street. But yeah, like people not looking, stepping out in traffic. I was trying to pull around cars on the right at an intersection, and some dudes were trying to holler at some girls, and I was like in the way, so I was basically like getting like collateral damage hollered at. I saw, you just see people going out to get drinks, like they can get the drinks to go. And so there's just like people dressed out for going out and stuff. But it's just sort of like, when you haven't seen that for a while, you're just like, what the fuck? Like it's genuinely, it just feels like the AI is glitching, and it's just like, it's populating sprites in the wrong place. You're going to start, glitching through the road if you're not careful. So it's just been a little bit weird. I have to be like way more on guard because of, everywhere I go when I'm cycling, it's just like, it's a little more crowded and a little dumber. But, nature is healing.
I gotta say, like April 2020, driving on the highways had a very I Am Legend kind of feel to it. Where
I know what you mean. Yeah,
it's just me, and this is so nice. This is nice. It's sad. I'm sad about the pandemic, but also I'm glad that I'm not surrounded by just a bunch of fucking dumbasses on the road right now. But we're back. Missouri is back to rolling gun battles again. So we are once again as we should be. Nature is healing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm seeing more NOS cartridges on the roads. Nature is healing. Yeah, man.
People are doing heroin outside again.
I don't know if you saw this, but apparently Michigan is having the worst outbreak it's ever had through the entire pandemic. Worse than April 2020, worse than November, December 2020, and January 2021. Like it's the absolute worst right now. And there was a piece in the New York Times maybe like 2 weeks ago about people in Michigan who were just like, fuck COVID, I don't give a shit, fuck masks. Like basically it's not real anymore and I'm tired of this shit. Like the libs need to stop talking about this virus. And once again, it was the New York Times, doing like a hazy diner portrait of Trump voters kind of shit, but about COVID freaks. And I mean, it's just very frustrating because, you could be turning the corner, but you're not, because there's an extent to which when you cannot ensure that people are going to be safe and the government refuses to pay people to stay home for real, you're going to be in the situation where I'm incredibly privileged. I work from home or I work in the studio where I can pick when I'm going to be in, so I know it's safe. I don't have to deal with customers. I don't work in a restaurant or a shop, for some asshole in fucking Michigan, some small business tyrant telling me, you've got to fucking, serve these people, and just like Blue Lives Matter QAnon people coming in and just like patriotically coughing on everyone, and so it just sucks because I feel so bad I don't feel bad for the people who are fucking stupid, but the problem is that it's one of those things where it's like a collateral damage kind of thing. Mm-hmm. People who are being dumbasses, like fuck them, but they're going to get lots of innocent people sick and lots of precarious people sick. And of course the state's going to provide like negative fucking accommodations for those people. And so what do you wind up with? I never want to be one of those people who's like, serves them right. Cause that's just like an incredibly Charlotte Clymer thing to say, because ultimately the people who are going to suffer the most are people who have precarious jobs and have to work in this environment where your Facebook memas believe that like if you cough on each other enough, then Donald Trump will be president again. And it just sucks, like I said.
Well, Nate, much like in real war, the culture war, the people who get hurt the most are the civilians.
Very true.
Not the people who are fighting it. Like the dumbasses who are out. Like when we went down to get our second shot, we didn't have to go down as far. We went to a closer Walmart that was only an hour and a half away, but pulled into the parking lot immediately. Like maybe about 30 or 40% mask wearing, and one guy openly carrying a Beretta. And it's like, dude, we're in Jackson, Missouri. Like there are no black people here. So what are you concerned about? Because I know that your thing is racism.
MS-13. He's concerned that Walmart is hiring MS-13 to take his job.
Right. And like I can't fault people who have been served nothing but, insane propaganda for their entire lives, and then have, an opposition party of the Democrats who do like literally nothing to counter that. So It's just like, look, man, Republicans just come down here and they, say it's all guns and Jesus, and how much they want you to love guns and Jesus, and how the Democrats don't want you to love guns and Jesus. And so what do? You hold on to your guns and Jesus, and you cough yourself to death, or you do heroin until you can't get up anymore, or you just, die in abject poverty because there's no there's no job opportunities, and rural areas are completely drying up and blowing away, and there's no hospitals to go to. But you know what? At least the Democrats not in charge. So like I honestly do not feel I don't like I'm not angry at these people. Like I'm sad and I'm disappointed that there's been a lot of lies that have been put out on every front by everybody, and it's hard. It is not easy to pick out the truth. You need time, you need resources, and you need the ability to give a shit to go do that. And I'm sorry, people in rural Missouri don't necessarily have that, or don't necessarily care about it. And that's that is not their fault. That is the fault of the environment in which they have been put in, and the environment in which people put around them. And you cannot fault an individual because they've been fed a steady diet of propaganda.
Well, and I feel the same way too here, in the sense that so often people are like, what the fuck is wrong with and it's like, well, these people are doing what the government is telling them is okay to do. And it's annoying as shit that the government is putting out wrong, incorrect, contradictory information. But like, you can't fault people who literally are following the rules that are being dictated to them. And it's like, and then especially with stuff like Eat Out to Help Out, when the government's like, it's safe, go and dine in restaurants in the middle of summer, please make sure to cough on each other, that caused a huge COVID spike. But like, you can't fault people who thought like they were doing their patriotic part to help British businesses. So like, I get what you're saying, but much like turning the corner in the pandemic and it getting fucked up at the last minute, apparently we are turning a corner in Afghanistan, and it's called, we're going to leave Afghanistan for good, apparently, on September 11th. By September 11th. For
20 symbolism. The 20-year anniversary.
Yep, that's it. So we have an article from CNN Politics here entitled, Biden to announce withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan by September 11th. So what does that mean? Well, President Joe Biden, having concluded there is no military solution to the security and political problems plaguing Afghanistan and determined to focus on more pressing national security challenges, will formally announce Wednesday that U.S. troops will withdraw from the country before the 20th anniversary of the September 11th terror attacks, a senior administration official said. The withdrawal extends the U.S. troop presence past a May 1 deadline set by the Trump administration in an agreement with the Taliban, but only by a matter of months. Biden has been weighing the decision for months with his advisors and signaled he did not believe U.S. troops should remain in the country long past the deadline. The Washington Post was the first to report the news. A senior administration official said NATO troops would follow the same withdrawal timeline. It's possible U.S. troops would be withdrawn well before September 11th, the official said, saying the date was the last possible time when remaining personnel would leave. The officials said that the U.S. had communicated to the Taliban in no uncertain terms that attacks on U.S. troops during the withdrawal process would be met with retaliation. But the withdrawal of U.S. forces comes with risks, as Biden's two predecessors, Presidents Barack Obama and Donald Trump, tried but were ultimately unable to untangle the U.S. from the war in Afghanistan. I wonder why.
Were we? Were they what's different about today than was different about 5 years or 10 years ago?
10 years ago. Yeah, I was going to say, fuck's sake. Senior military commanders have advocated keeping U.S. troops in the country and have argued that a premature withdrawal could lead to a collapse of the Afghan government. A U.S. intelligence community assessment released Tuesday warned that the Taliban was likely to make gains on the battlefield. In a discussion over the past month, Biden was, quote, adamant, unquote, that a hasty withdrawal was not viable, but he judged that remaining in the country much longer did not reflect the needs of the current global threat picture. Biden asked for a policy review that would include, quote, genuine realistic options, unquote, that would not, quote, sugarcoat that situation. The official said that unlike past efforts to set a U.S. withdrawal date, Biden's deadline was not conditions-based. Quote, the president has judged that a conditions-based approach, which is then the approach of the past 2 decades, is a recipe for staying in Afghanistan forever. And so he has reached the conclusion that the United States will complete its drawdown, remove its forces from Afghanistan before September 11th, the senior official said. U.S. officials say there are about 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. The U.S. isn't planning to withdraw completely, as the senior administration official said. Some troops will remain in the country to provide diplomatic security, though the exact number has not been decided. I mean, there's the embassy, but then it's like, is it the embassy? Is it just like dudes guarding the gate at the embassy, or are you having like a fucking brigade there? In addition, it's not immediately clear what will happen to several hundred U.S. Special Operations Forces that often work with the CIA on counterterrorism missions. Oh, you mean like the 00 unit and the 01 unit? I wonder what those guys do. Must be good. Those troops are not publicly acknowledged and are not part of the formal calculations of 2,500 troops in the country.
We're only pulling back the troops that we're telling you about, not the secret troops that you know about, but we're not telling you about.
Not the ones that do summary executions of children. Those guys are actually Afghan, but the Afghan government can't report on them because they don't know about them because they're not even fucking controlled by the Afghan military. I think it's a great system.
Well, Nate, you did so much complaining about how every time you would go in after the special forces were there and everybody would be pissed off and then you'd have to deal with it. So you just don't have to deal with it anymore. And we're just going to have special forces piss off the locals.
Yeah, well, they're Afghans doing it, but they're even worse than American Special Forces. It's amazing. Biden's decision split Capitol Hill, with Republican hawks slamming the withdrawal plans as, quote, a grave mistake, unquote. Congressional Democrats, meanwhile, along with a handful of Republicans, praised Biden for finally bringing an end to the U.S. war. Biden's new September 11th deadline to withdraw U.S. troops would mark a symbolic end to the longest war in American history, exactly 20 years after the September 11th, 2001 attacks that sparked the initial invasion of Afghanistan. More than 2,200 U.S. troops have died in the country since 2001, and more than 20,000 have been wounded. The administration officials said that the objectives of the initial invasion of Afghanistan to deliver justice for the 9/11 attacks and disrupt terrorists had been achieved, quote, some years ago. Quote, this is not 2001, it's 2021. In 2021, the terrorist threat we face emanates from a number of countries, indeed a number of continents, the official said. Now the U.S. will focus on diplomatic efforts to foster peace talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban. The Afghanistan troop withdrawal is the first major decision of Biden's presidency regarding U.S. troops abroad, and Biden wrestled with what to do for months leading up to the May 1 deadline set by Trump. Last month, Biden signaled he was unlikely to meet the May 1 deadline, but said at his first press conference as president that he did not envision U.S. troops remaining in Afghanistan by next year. We're not staying for a long time. We will leave, Biden said. The question is when we leave. It's going to be hard to meet the May 1 deadline just in terms of tactical reasons. God, even in like his press quotes, he sounds senile.
Fine.
I got a little more here.
There's a lot to this article, but go ahead.
Secretary of State Tony Blinken laid the groundwork for Biden to make an announcement about the withdrawal in a phone call with President Ashraf Ghani on Tuesday, according to those two sources familiar with the phone call. Blinken did not divulge precise details about the withdrawal, but explained that Biden would be calling Ghani on Thursday, and Blinken left the Afghan president with the understanding that Biden had decided on withdrawing U.S. troops over the course of the next few months. Biden administration officials have been sending signals to Afghan officials at the working level that this was the direction they were headed in, one source explained. The Biden administration is also making a series of phone calls to allies in the region this afternoon to detail their planned strategy, two diplomatic sources told CNN. Ghani tweeted on Tuesday that he's spoken to Blinken about planned U.S.-backed peace talks between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban set for this week and the upcoming phone call with Biden. That was just basically summarizing a tweet. The planned withdrawal of U.S. forces quickly sparked criticism from Republican hawks who said it risks eroding U.S. gains. They argued that lawmakers in both parties pushed back on Trump's attempts to prematurely withdraw U.S. troops and should now do so, since Biden is doing the same.
Precipitously withdrawing U.S. forces from Afghanistan is a grave mistake. It's a retreat in the face of the enemy that has not been vanquished, an abdication of American leadership,
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said Tuesday on the Senate floor.
Leaders in both parties, including me, offer criticism when the prior administration floated the concept of a reckless withdrawal from Syria and Afghanistan. Those same voices in both parties should be equally concerned about the Biden administration's announcement today,
McConnell added. At least one prominent Democrat, Senate Foreign Relations Chairman Bob Menendez, said he wanted to get U.S. troops home but was worried, quote, we don't lose what we were seeking to achieve, unquote. Quote, we don't have enough troops there to change the tide and make some dramatic difference, so if we're not going to do that, why keep the troops that are there and put them at risk, Menendez said. So I understand all of that thinking. I'm just concerned that after so much blood and national treasure, we don't lose what we were seeking to achieve. Recent attacks against U.S. forces in Afghanistan have also fueled concerns. CNN reported last week that the Taliban twice targeted one of the most heavily guarded bases in the country in March, and that U.S. military personnel working for the CIA were at the installation when it came under fire. The annual U.S. intelligence community's assessment released Tuesday was grim on the outlook for Afghanistan, concluding that prospects for a peace deal between the Taliban and the Afghan government remain low during the next year. Quote, the Taliban is likely to make gains on the battlefield, and the Afghan government will struggle to hold the Taliban at bay if the coalition withdraws support, the assessment says. The U.S. wants to keep an intelligence presence in the country, according to two sources familiar with the matter. The senior administration official said the U.S. would keep U.S. intelligence and military capabilities positioned in the region to respond should an external threat from al-Qaeda reemerge. Still, after 20 years of war, there's a sentiment in both parties to end the war in Afghanistan, and some of Biden's staunchest GOP critics praised his decision on Tuesday. I'm glad the troops are coming home, said Senator Ted Cruz.
I was wondering what your Ted Cruz voice was going to be. Go ahead.
Bringing our troops home should not be taken as a sign that America will be any less vigilant in prosecuting and protecting American lives and those of our allies, but we can do so without a permanent military presence in hostile terrain.
Democrats also backed up Biden, saying that there needed to be a, quote, safe withdrawal. It's time for the longest war in the history of the United States to end, said Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin of Illinois. I'm looking for as safe a departure as possible for everybody involved. That's a fucking long-ass article, man. But, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to cover, and not a surprise that Mitch McConnell...
Some snake's swallowing an egg. I'm a fucking turtle.
He does actually talk like that. If you ever heard him talk, like, you would expect him to be whiny, but he's got an incredibly deep voice, but he also has the accent of the guy who was in early 2009 who was mad that because he thought Obama was going to ban flavored dip. You remember that?
Yeah.
The redneck guy is like,
this fucking Obama is going to ban flavored dip.
Like, that's the way that he talks. So anyway, Francis, what are your reactions now that I've read that like 40 paragraph story?
I did not expect you to read the whole thing, but that's fine because you know what? People don't read the whole articles, and we do. We read it for you so that you can really take it in. Because this is, as you said, this isn't just a we're going to be out on the 11th, and that's it. That's all we're going to talk about because this is it's a volatile situation, but also like I want to go to these people who are worried about, like, are we not meeting our goals? And I just want to ask them, what exactly are the goals?
What do you think is going on there? What do you think it's actually like? Because it was shit 12 years ago when I was there. It's shit now. Like, the situation is not made better by an American military presence. It's made actively worse.
Right.
And
I'm sorry,
and all of the things are like, well, the gains we've made. What fucking gains? It's not even safe in Kabul anymore. Like, Kabul used to have an expat community that was relatively libertine because, like, you could do shit there. It's not safe anymore. Like, nowhere is safe in Afghanistan now. It's gotten worse. Like, we've made it steadily worse. Like, things improved somewhat after the Taliban left, obviously, at the end of 2001, and the security situation has only degenerated ever since, and that's because there's an insurgency against the U.S. and NATO troop presence.
Yeah, and I mean, we had our own, like, there's kind of a version of de-Baathification in Afghanistan, which was, on a large scale, was a horrible idea in Iraq because basically just took a bunch of people and said, you don't have jobs anymore because we don't trust you, but also we're not going to do anything for it. So why don't you guys go pick up some AK-47s and form a resistance against us, and we'll just do that for the next 8 to 10 years. The same thing. And I just, like, I really don't know what... Like, okay, so you're worried about the Taliban taking over. That's like being worried about fucking fundamentalist Christians being elected. Like, it's gonna happen, and I'm gonna have to deal with it one way or the other. Like, I'm sorry, I don't see how the Taliban is any better or worse than, a Marjorie Taylor Greene who is just waving a Bible and a gun around. Like, they do the same thing. It's the same fucking thing. But at least the Taliban, like MGT and fucking what's his name, Colton Bumpo, Madison Cawthorn. These are people who don't actually do anything. At least the Taliban came in and was just like, hey, we're gonna make this an Islamic caliphate, but we're gonna at least try to get you guys some electricity and some clean water. While the Americans are just like, we have to deny these things to our enemy, so we're just gonna go ahead and blow everything up. Although, I will say, Nate, when I was there in Afghanistan, I don't know if you guys had PRTs when you were there still.
Yep.
Okay, so the provincial reconstruction teams were there. They were incredibly inefficient when I was there. It was basically, the whole idea of a PRT was you would have civil affairs soldiers out on, kind of an area that's, not necessarily rural, but, these smaller bases that were out and about in Jalalabad, Asadabad, Ghazni, Gardez, places like that. At least those are the places I hit up. The idea was you'd go to a village and you'd say, what do you need? And the village elders would say, well, we don't have, we don't have water. We would like a well. And so the Americans come in, they hire local well diggers to dig a well and to build the well. And then the Americans go in and they inspect it to say, yes, this well is well built. It's good. We'll go ahead and give you the money for building the well. Like a normal contractor, like if you ever had to get like contract work done, that's how it normally works. But of course, with Afghanistan, we don't do that. I think, was it Afghanistan or Iraq where we did you can have a $10,000 microloan that you don't have to pay back. And then of course people just took it and never did anything. I'm just like, sweet, free $10,000 for me. All of this is just so full of like ridiculous graft and grift and all of this stuff. So like, I want us to get out of Afghanistan because I really want us to stop being visited by the wallet inspector and constantly handing our wallets over to the government of Afghanistan. And like, this isn't like, blaming Afghanistan for it. We keep falling for it. Like if I walked up to somebody and it's like, hey, you owe me $20, and they just like, oh, I guess I owe you $20 because you're telling me, how many times are you going to walk up to that person and say, you owe me $20? So, and you know what, Nate? Also, ISIS didn't exist before we were there. What the fuck, man? ISIS didn't even come around until 2006 because of what we were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, like, yeah, as you said, we actively made things worse.
Well, yeah, and I mean, ISIS or Daesh, like, it's a different sort of thing. It's obviously not the same as like the organization that morphed out of Al Qaeda in Iraq, but the Taliban and Daesh are fighting against one another in Afghanistan. There have been instances in the last couple of years of U.S. JTACs and special operators doing airstrikes against ISIS targets in Afghanistan that were called in by the Taliban. Like, the thing about it is, we have made it worse. We have engendered a huge amount of hatred because of just the blunt force of having a military occupation of that country. People aren't buying the idea that like, oh, we put an Afghan face on it. It's like, don't fucking blow smoke up my ass. There's this like people, they know what's going on because they see the military vehicles and the troops out everywhere, and like, just don't fucking lie to yourself, and don't assume these people are too stupid to see what's obviously in front of them. You might be, but they're not. And I think the thing about it is, like, I don't want to romanticize or excuse the Taliban because they fucking suck, but I think ultimately my belief here is that the Taliban are Afghan. Now, many of them are Pashtun people from the Pakistan side, but many of them are not also. Like, we can't solve that country. We can't fix its problems. We can't enforce some solution, through military power. And I've said this before. If your take is one of anti-imperialism and anti-war, you've been arguing this from the beginning. Even if you were a liberal interventionist, at this point, there just isn't anything else you can do. There's nothing left to try. There's nothing else we can do, so we need to leave. Like, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of lives. The people who suffer the most from it are Afghan civilians. Like, stop fucking lying to yourself. Stop patting yourself on the back. Be like, oh, it's going to be different than Vietnam. Like, no, it's not. It's the one of the most depressing things in the world for me was reading A Bright Shining Lie and realizing that, like, everything about fucking Afghanistan was the same as Vietnam. Like, it's never been any different than that. The people in charge are idiots. They're lying to you, or they have a financial stake involved. Stop being an idiot. And if you think like, well, we're going to abandon, we're abandoning Afghan women to their fate, like, go to fucking Afghanistan and see what it's like there. It's not good. We haven't made it better. What the fuck are you talking about?
Right. I'm really curious about all these gains. Like, you see, what about the gains? And they show like an AP photo of some young girls in what looks like a schoolroom, and it's like, I have no idea if that's State Department propaganda, because like, I know that stuff has been created. I know it because I've been around it, because I was public affairs. You take the good photos and you say, look how good everything is going. And you don't take the photos of like the bombed out schools and stuff. And you said that there's nothing else that we can try, but there's lots of things that we could try. The problem is that the way we try things is with a gun. Like, Americans, and this is what throws me off about, like, you remember when Tom Cotton wrote the op-ed about send the National Guard in to gun down protesters, right? Like, the people need to understand that the American psyche and the American idea of conflict resolution is one of violence. Like, that's all we've ever been taught. How do we win the Civil War? Through violence. Or the Civil War, black people gained their independence through violence. America gained its independence through violence. We have fought Canada and we have fought Mexico at various points in our history. We helped genocide entire tribes of Native Americans and then shove them onto reservations and let them die slower instead of dying faster like we used to do. Like, the entirety of what we do is violence. So I do not understand, one, why Tom Cotton would think, oh, well, if we just do violence at Americans, they'll just sit down and be fine with it. Fucking of course not. We'll absolutely do immediate violence back. Like, it's surprising that gunshots haven't really been fully exchanged back and forth. But also, like, we just, we could go into Afghanistan and say, we're going to build hospitals and try to staff it. Like, you know what, Nate? We could go to fucking Cuba and we could say, Cuba, we know that you guys love to send doctors out and about. We would love to build facilities for you in Afghanistan to send, and maybe you guys can staff it with a couple of doctors to train local people. There are so many things we can do that do not involve violence, but we cannot comprehend something that doesn't involve force.
I think also there's no apparatus in the U.S. government that would be able to do that without it being a fucking shop front for CIA shit. Like, it's just,
sure.
You look at what's happened with us using polio vaccination campaigns to conduct special reconnaissance. And the fact that that's led to basically people refusing to get their kids vaccinated against polio because they're worried that they're worried of threats from local insurgents, but also B, because like they don't want to do something that's being actually is like a fig leaf for people doing fucking recon for drone strikes. Like, if you want to know what the polio vaccine thing was, they were stealing DNA genetic material from people to find a genetic link to Osama bin Laden. They were trying to find family members. So the CIA, and they were giving out polio vaccines. Like, they were legitimately doing something, but also at the same time, like, stealing genetic material from people, which, like, as an American, can you imagine if some, but of course we can't imagine it because it does happen. But like, as a white middle class American, that is just horrifying to me. Just that we would do something like that. And that's the thing. Like I said, violence is our love language. That's just what we do. Like, we're gonna. If we can't do it by force, we can't comprehend something that's going to take 20 to 30 years to work. We can't say, if we put these things in place now and build on them in 30 or 40 years, these places are going to be better because we're helping them. We need to use violence, and then we need to get out as quickly as possible and let the whole place collapse on itself. And we have so much history. We have so much to look back on. And I think that the problem is that people are looking back on it and saying, well, we don't want a fall of Saigon moment. And it's like, man, we had a fall of Saigon moment in 2006, bro. Like, this is, you want to talk about the fall of Fallujah in 2004? Like, we've had our falls of, and we've all fell directly onto our faces and really fucked up. So I don't, Nate, there's no correct answer here. Like, you can't stay and make things better. And if you leave, things are probably going to get worse too, but they are going to get better on their own eventually. Like, I don't know how, but like, it's obvious we're not doing it. So yeah, and it sucks because obviously there's a lot of people that wanted to make things better and that were forced into a situation where they had to either work with the military occupation or work with the Taliban. Like, you know what I mean? It's not as if, I'm not saying you're obliged to celebrate what looks like it's going to be the Taliban retaking that country. What I am saying is we're not helping, we're making it worse. And there's the question of, we are actively harming the lives of some of the most vulnerable and exploited people on the planet. We are dumping money and resources into something we know is not going to work. That's gonna. So it's like, there's the argument that you're depriving, you're harming the lives of the people in the country you're occupying. You're also harming America and Americans by diverting resources that could go to making us have a slightly more functional failed state, and putting it into something you already know is a failure. And I think the biggest, the thing that offends me the most is the violence and injustice inflicted on Afghan people. But also, the sad thing is that a lot of fucking Americans, it doesn't really matter to them. Certainly not the kind of people who are going to like write op-eds about like, how dare we, blah, 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 it was our sacrifice for nothing. It's like, yeah, man. Yeah, it was. And if you actually went to Afghanistan and you actually fucking pounded dirt, like, it was for nothing. Like, don't lie to your fucking self. Don't lie to yourself, man. Like, if you were actually out doing it, how fucked the situation it was. You know how hopeless and how convoluted and how corrupted it was, and how anything that was successful was then completely thrown out by the next unit. And there was no buy-in because there was no one could trust you, no one could trust the Afghan government, and the level of corruption they were inflicting on people made no one want to support them. You were supporting them with violence and the threat of violence alone. Like, don't lie to yourself. Don't fucking lie to yourself. And that's the thing, man.
One thing that really kind of fucks me up about this war when I think about it is we have so much documentation about the Civil War, about Vietnam, about various hills being taken and the people who died on those hills, and how the pincer movements and how the attacks and everything went. And like, I really don't think we're going to have that anymore, like in Afghanistan or Iraq. Like, the big battles are known because they were the big battles, but all the small skirmishes and stuff, like you said, man, you'd get replaced by a unit and you take your hard drives home and delete everything. Like, where was all that stuff being uploaded to? Where was there it wasn't. Like, there's so much stuff that is just not going to be recorded. And, hey, maybe there'll be some journals. Joe has The Hooligans of Kandahar, which, is his own memoir about it. So we will have, like, individual stories, which is, where a lot of the information from Civil War, Vietnam, things like that came from. But also we had government sources. We had, like, yes, here's what happened. Here's where the battles were. Here's where the hills, here's the hill number. Here's where everything happened, and we're just not going to have that. And I don't know if that it's just a weird thing to think about to me, I guess, because we're so well cataloged in our past, and you can really see the American apparatus starting to slowly unwind, I guess, because we're just not taking good notes anymore. And we're not taking good notes because we don't care. And when you're not taking notes because you don't care, that's when you start getting D's and F's in fucking school. Except that this is politics, and we're probably going to balkanize pretty soon.
Damn, Francis, I would hate to get an F on the war in Afghanistan. I take your point there. I mean, honestly, I think the concern that I have with that is, less about the historical aspect of it and more the fact that, like, I worry that without, put it this way, without the ability to substantiate stuff, there's going to be a lot of shoddy scholarship, and I can't wait to see what fucking, I guess by that point it might be boomers or millennials who are right-wing, insane, psychos, John Birch Society people. But, in the same vein that the boomers are like, the damn libs lost us Vietnam because the media was just too lib, I wonder what their argument is going to be about what lost us Afghanistan. We were too woke, that's why we lost in Afghanistan, or some dumb bullshit like that. And actually, no, it has nothing to do with being woke. It has to do with the fact that the people fighting you, like, live there. And they don't want you there, and they're tougher than you, so fucking deal with it. You lost, we lost, like, fuck out of here.
The arguments are always going to be hilarious to me because it's, it wasn't Trump's fault that he couldn't end it because of Obama. But if you even go back to, all right, well, Bush was in charge for the first fucking 7 years of this war, so where was he on that? And there's always going to be an excuse. There's always going to be an excuse of why Afghanistan or Iraq didn't go the way it was supposed to go, and the answer is never we fucked up. Like, you can never, nobody who loves the who owns a I stand for the flag and I kneel for the cross, and nobody who owns a shirt like that will ever say that America did something wrong or that we fucked up somehow. So that's the first admission that needs to happen. Which
I know I've talked about this a couple of times in the show before, but I'll bring this back just in case folks listening to this episode haven't listened to our back catalog, and that is there was a story not that long ago. I think it might have been Chris Chivers writing it for the New York Times. I'm not sure, but it was about people who were assigned to Karshi Khanabad, the K2 base in Uzbekistan, which got closed down in 2005. So it got stood up in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, and it was like until Manas became like the main base in Central Asia for translating people in and out of theater. there was this camp at K2, and it was a Soviet army base that then got turned into an Uzbek army base. It was a tent city and an airfield, a couple of hard stand buildings. The problem was, as they later discovered, was that the tent city at K2 was built on what had previously been a Soviet NBC decon site. And because it was
worse than an Indian burial ground, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is it was a site where vehicles that had been exposed to, or materials that had been exposed to nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons were decontaminated. And so there was a lot of pollutants in the soil. And here's the thing: it's a tent city in Central Asia. So you can imagine that in the springtime it rains a fuckload, which means it's muddy, which means that shit gets churned up. And then in summer, it gets really dry, and thus it gets dusty and stuff gets blown around. So there was one of the stories that's like being built upon, and people are talking about more, with regard to like disabled veterans things, is that a lot of people who were assigned to K2 developed cancer and died. And the thing about it is that when you read this article and you see some of the materials from people who were veterans of K2 who got exposed to this stuff in Uzbekistan and then developed cancer, when you see like the materials they collected of like, footage of them, fucking around in the tents and hanging out in the chow hall and on the flight line and like, in the motor pool and stuff. Everyone's in BDUs, in desert BDUs. Everyone's got the black fleeces. Like the video footage they have is super grainy, fucking like 240p digital camera, like very primitive digital camera video, or like practically Sony Mavica quality digital images. Because it was so long ago. It was so fucking long ago. I mean, it was almost 20 years ago. Those people, a lot of those junior soldiers were people who enlisted after 9/11, which means if they're still if they haven't died of fucking cancer, they're going to be putting in their retirement packets right now because they're going to hit 20 years. Like, it's been so long, it's beyond like a generation. And that's the thing that really gets me about it, is that like we're at a point now where for a lot of folks, it's not like 25 years, you know what I mean? But for a lot of folks, like I was still in high school when this was happening. Like, I wasn't eligible to join the army until a couple weeks after 9/11, I could have enlisted, but I was still in hyou school. So I was a junior in high school. So I would have had to enlist with my parents' consent. I wouldn't have been deployable until the next year. So, I mean, like bro, like you and me, like I'm fucking pushing 40 and it's still going on.
Yeah, I mean, I was there in 2004. I joined in 2000, and I was in Afghanistan in 04. And young and 20, and feeling like, oh, we're doing something here. We're helping out the people, and we're gonna do great things here. And then 15 years later, it's just like, what the fuck, man? Why are we?
Yeah.
Why in God's name? It's like it hasn't gotten better, and that is the worst part of it for me, is to know that like a year of my life, 2 years of my life, really, and a lot of my mental state and physical state and things like that were fucked up and destroyed over lies and bullshit and things that didn't matter, except for lining somebody else's pocket. So you really feel that like, oh shit, capitalism comes for all of us at some point. And even, at the time, I'm just like, sweet, I'm going to make money. I don't have to pay taxes. I'm going to walk out of here with like, $20,000 if I play my cards right. And, a lifetime of being scared of fireworks. It's going to be great.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's more like, I think the thing that really gets me is I worked with, for most of my deployment, I lived on an Afghan base. I worked with so many people, military, civilian, who were Afghan, who were just like the nicest, most welcoming and hardworking people. And yeah, there's fucking problems. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I just feel bad for those people because like they were just trying to survive, and they have had to live through the kind of conditions that would, the exposure to which has driven you and me crazy after not that long of a fucking period of time. And that's their everyday, and that's their homeland, I feel really bad. And I want this to be over with, but I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't point out that we were also told in 2014 that we will under no conditions stay past 2014 to withdraw from Afghanistan. And we are still in Afghanistan. We were also told that the first thing President Obama was going to do in 2009 when he took office was close Guantanamo Bay. That was his first executive order, and Guantanamo Bay is still open. It just has geriatric care now. I don't necessarily think, one of the things that Biden did apparently is to announce that all of the troop cuts in Germany have been reversed and they're actually going to increase troop levels in Germany. Now, what the fuck are we doing in Germany? We have no, I mean, I don't care about your like strategic protection. Like, fuck that. We don't need to have troops in Western Europe. And yet we do. So,
well,
I'm not 100%
be honest,
convinced.
The Russians are getting a little flexy lately, so I understand why we're building up, but of course it's just a bunch of, I mean, it's springtime. Everybody's moving around because it's warm, and that's when nobody wants to play war games in the fucking cold, not even the Russians. So
yeah,
I'm with you.
I just
like,
don't have any belief that Russia's going to invade Western Europe. It's just not going to happen. And quite frankly, the point that I would make too is that any argument you could make about like, oh, we need like a footprint to flex troop capacity if something happens, it's like, it's not like the Germans don't have a military and don't have airports. Germany's a more developed country than America.
Yeah, they have better infrastructure than we do.
Yeah, the argument that we have to maintain stuff there just in case, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, if something like that actually kicked off, it just, you can't. It's like, it's weird how this argument that a 1 in a trillion chance, international world-ending catastrophe might happen, and that's the reason why we have to keep spending more and more money on Pentagon bullshit and not doing anything for the people who live in America. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't buy it. But the reason I bring this up is more that I feel like we need to not necessarily say, well, there it is, it's over, until it's actually over. If it does happen, I'll be very surprised. I'll be happy in a way, and obviously like shattered and unhappy too. But until it actually happens, I just am wary because we have been told this so many times. And I remember getting up early to catch the recap of Obama's speech in 2010, I think, or December 2009. I can't remember. While I was there, because I was hoping he was like, yep, I've assessed Afghanistan, it fucking sucks, we're leaving. And instead it was like, nope, 5 more years. And in 2009, I knew this is so stupid, this is a waste of life, like, we shouldn't be here, nobody should be here, like, this is a country that needs to sort out its own problems on its own, but like, we should not be here.
And anytime anybody tells you we spent too much in blood and treasure, these are people who have never read an investment 101 book that's just like, stop throwing good money after bad money, acknowledge a loss, and cut your losses.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, rich dad, poor dad went fucking bankrupt for like weird fraud shit, and all of his advice was wrong, and yet he probably could have told you that this was a bad idea.
Speaking of, apparently Bernie Madoff died today, so.
Oh, rest in piss. So anyway, Francis, we have a bonus this week about
fun bonus. I enjoyed this one
about cruise ships and themed cruises. So maybe introduce this to the listeners.
There's cruises, you get on a big boat and you eat a whole lot and then you get norovirus and throw up a bunch. But did you know that there are cruises with themes, such as a Kid Rock cruise or a motorcycle rally cruise? If you're wondering how those things work, well, have I got a bonus episode for you where I describe all these things to Joe and Carrie Shocks, and failed to convince either one of them to get on a cruise, which is understandable that, they didn't want to get on the Elvis cruise or a knitting cruise or perhaps a 80s rock cruise or a 311 cruise. I gave them a lot of options and they didn't bite on any of them. So, you can sign up for the Patreon. You can listen to yourself and decide if one of these is right for you.
I can't imagine doing a multiple, because that's what it is. It's effectively like an insular convention that you can't leave for a couple days.
Oh, God. Yeah. No, you can't go anywhere. Well, they stop at places. Like, they stop and you get off the boat in Bahamas or whatever. So there's, like, going to be days at sea, which they're not in port. And then that's probably going to be the days of all the really big stuff. And then they'll have, like I said, these all stop in places. They don't just go and sit out in the ocean for a week or whatever.
I mean, I'm just just get stranded.
I'm just imagining that there's, like, a designated crew member who, like, stands at the top of the gangway, and whenever one of the contract members of the whatever the theme is, like whether it's like a member of a band or some random member of a TV show or something, they just stand there with a taser, just making sure they don't get off the boat, because they know if they do, they'll never get back on again.
All right, so not Star Trek. Let's talk about music though. So, Joe, you have terrible fun. You have a terrible taste in music, so perhaps you
I will comfortably say I have the worst taste in music of us three. And
How
I'll
about-
include Nate in that mine is definitely worse than his. I know what I am. I'm garbage. It's fine.
Joe, I'm curious about something. If I were to name a band that has a cruise dedicated to them, what's the first band that comes to your mind?
Like any band?
Any band, just a band that you know is like just ridiculous and would do some bullshit like this.
Fucking like any butt rock or hair metal band, really.
Okay, so you're going to be good with Kiss Cruise, the Psycho Circus.
I'm not even a little
Detroit
bit
Pride,
shocked by
baby.
that.
10 years of commotion on the ocean.
Oh no.
You know,
You
that's troubling with all of the recent accusations against Gene Simmons. Don't get on a boat with that man.
They're going to have quite the lineup. They've got Rat, Queensryche, Fozzy, Black and Blue, Tuck Smith, and the Restless Hearts. More to be announced. It's already sold out. So unfortunately,
So
we
this
can't
is just
get-
another Jericho cruise.
Well, and so this is another.
Yeah.
Wait, so just to be clear, this is another cruise that includes Fozzy.
Yes.
So I just want to be very clear. They spend the majority of their time as a band in international waters. Is that
Hell
like
yeah.
a fair characterization?
Dude,
Their
if I
flag
could be,
has
if I could be the
fringes.
house, if I could be the house band of a cruise and just like constantly be cruising around and eating the ridiculously good food that's on cruises. Well, I don't know about these. I don't know if the Kiss cruise has any good food, but the ones I've been on have good food. So, I mean, I could think of worse things. I mean, come on, Chris Jericho is old. He doesn't want to get like fucking power bombed and shit all over a ring for money. It's just like, yeah, let me go on a cruise, glad hand some people, play some rock and roll, and just be done with the day.
I mean, I'm just saying though, like if you're a band and you spend the majority of your time in international waters away from the jurisdiction of any sort of state, that to me raises some questions. You know, I mean, I'm not like, not saying exactly what those questions are, not in a defamatory way, but to me that suggests a certain set of life choices that you might have made. And, leads me to believe that you're maybe less on a cruise and more on one might say a ship of the damned, as it were.
All right, are you guys? So you're not into Kiss, so maybe some themed stuff. The '70s rock and romance cruise.
How is this also not just a Kiss cruise?
I refer back to my
Because-
international waters comment on that.
No, this is going to be some slower rock. We got Foreigner, we've got Air Supply, we've got the Guess Who, War, the Family Stone, no Sly, sad, Toast,
Yeah, he's been
Badfinger.
through some shit.
There's going to be, so this is a kickback in luxury aboard a top-rated celebrity summit. So you can, oh boy, there's a lot of tie-dye guitars going on here, and a lot of mature people, we'll just say. It's 70s music, man. Let's see, so they go Miami,
So it's
they
all
go to St.
disco.
Martin. No, there is a disco cruise. This is rock and romance community.
What's the difference? It's 70 music. It all just molds together into being on a Vietnam movie playlist.
Bro, are you going to say the same thing about the music that we grew up with, that like, Eve 6 falls into the same category as ICP? Of course not. They're two completely separate things that existed at the same time. Disco and slow jam.
So you're saying there's multiple universes of juggalos?
I'm saying that, you can't just say that disco is the same thing as a juggalo, all right? That's what
It's
we're
because
getting
I don't
to.
want nuance from someone from the 70s because I don't care about them.
All right, so we've got another 70s themed cruise. See, there's different 70s themed cruise. There's a lot of stuff going on. This
I
is
feel
the
like there's
era
some
of
turf wars going on here. Like
70s
one 70s cruise aping guys off the other 70s cruise.
70s stuff is boomers. So boomers want their weird, ridiculous shit catered to.
But they're already
will
on the
have-
motorcycle cruise.
Right, some of them are going to be on the
Also, just to
the
circle-
Kiss cruise. Some of them are going to be on the 70s rock and romance cruise. Some of them are going to be on the Flower Power cruise.
So just to
There's a
circle back
of
to that
course.
though, but also like
Fuck it.
a motorcycle cruise that involves very much never being on a motorcycle because you're on a boat.
At all. Yeah.
Maybe
Correct.
they bring their motorcycles too and just drive around in circles.
Like,
I mean, most of them don't ride to Sturgis either, so it doesn't really fucking matter.
right? Like you just have your fucking Harley like towed onto the boat. It's like a ferry. They just like keep them all in the hold, just like so you can like feel like you're riding
It's-
the motorcycle even though you're not really.
It's just
Kinda
going
hope
to be a
somebody
bunch
dumps
of
them in.
it's going to be a bunch of guys with gigantic guts wearing do-rags and sunglasses in a pool with their
Entirely
phones
too much leather.
showing each other pictures of their motorcycles at home. That's going to be the entire thing.
That's just called working for the local garbage department.
All right, so the Flower Power Cruise is a little bit different. The Guess Who is on here, though. But we also have John Lodge of the Moody Blues and Mark Lindsay, parentheses, former lead singer of Paul Revere and the Raiders. Family Stone's on this one. Yeah, this is kind of bullshit. This is a lot of the same.
I told you defended them, and I was right. They're all pretty much the same.
Hey, I'm saying there are there's always going to be crossover. There are differences. All right.
Do the Flower Power Cruise just get together and realize that, like, wow, we had all this power once, and then we became everything we hated?
All right. So I assume that this means that you're not going to go for the country music cruise.
You know, I think even I'm too dark to be welcome there.
I don't even recognize. See, here's the thing about I don't know shit about country music. I don't recognize any of the names on here. Josh Turner, Mark Chestnut, Lee Greenwood. I know Lee Greenwood. Yeah, I don't really know any of these. But there is also a separate outlaw country cruise. So,
all right, tell me more about
those
that.
are different.
Tell me
the
about
only reason I know this
cruise.
is because I lived in Texas for almost 10 years. They would not stop fucking talk about it. Outlaw country is just country when you have a felony charge on your record.
I laugh because I have a cousin that was totally played in a band on an outlaw country cruise before. He has a clean record. I don't know about the rest of the guys in the band.
That's just stolen valor.
Let's see. Outlaw country. Miami to Costa Maya, Mexico, and Belize. Ooh, this is nice just for where they're stopping. I see this one.
I mean, so you're going from Miami to where?
Belize.
It ends in Belize. So the ports of call would be Miami to Costa Maya, Mexico, and a place called Harvest Cay, Belize.
So do you and it's an outlaw country cruise, so they give you a chance to do they specifically get you off the boat to go buy a key, or do you?
I hope so.
You just go hang out in McAfee's murder compound in Belize.
Do you get do they give you a bag of Johnny Cash's Black Betty's when you get on board?
I think it just assumed that you smuggled your own drugs on.
You just get a whole.
That's fair. You don't want amateurs. I mean, that's legit. I understand that.
I'm just curious where all these ships are flagged out of.
Panama.
Oh, they're
all flagged out of Panama.
No, they're all flagged out of the Bahamas.
Yeah, okay. One of them, either that or I think I looked it up earlier today. There's I think one U.S. flagged cruise ship company, and part of it is because there's a couple of the boats that they run are just entirely based around Hawaii, so they don't go to other places, and so because of the Jones Act, they have to be American flagged.
Yeah, I'm gonna start my own company and flag it out of Moldova. Follow absolutely no rules. It's just gonna be a waterbound hostel.
Yeah, I mean that's most of them. I mean they all the cruise ship companies have really fucking terrible labor practices and predominantly rely on Philippine laborers. Philippine seamen, because they have a fairly strong maritime culture, and so they just essentially use them all as indentured servants on their boats. And there's a very strong both class system that intersects with a race system on a lot of these boats, where the captain, a lot of the people you see in the white uniforms are all white looking American folks, and then everyone else who works there is Filipino or comes from another country and is paid cents on the dollar.
All right, everybody, as always, thank you for listening. Follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, and follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. We appreciate your patronage and all the ways that you support us. And for Nate, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep, have a good one.